In this chapter, we're going to learn how to make this text effect for ourselves. There's much more going on than what may first meet the eye, but learning the techniques in this chapter, how to create this effect, will then stand us in good stead to be able to not only reuse this however we want, with whatever text we want and whatever font, but moving on, we'll be working out how to use this across multiple projects again and again and again. Let's get into it. First off, the blur text effect. Now, up until now, all typography that is kind of animating on, we've used Premiere Composer predominantly. And why wouldn't you? I mean, we've got loads and loads and loads of different types of text that we can just drag in and edit. Well, this is, say, a ready meal, a microwave meal, a TV dinner, depending on where you live in the world, a meal that's ready for you that you just need to either reheat in the microwave or in the oven. And while depending where you've bought it from, a ready meal can be really quite good quality. It's not the same as making it from scratch. And making something from scratch, like some form of text animation, can not only make it more yours, as it were, but you also then learn more techniques to then be able to apply them. Say you've got that ready meal, but the ready meal doesn't really come with any sides. Well, if you know how to do maybe dauphinoise potatoes, you can do them on the side, so they can complement each other. You can tell I'm really into my food. By the way, if you've never had dauphinoise potatoes and you like cream and garlic, well, you need to look at that. You really do. In fact, let me just, I'm going to start a new sequence from this. And just to be absolutely clear, dauphinoise is spelt something like that. Essential graphics, change our color and make that bigger, maybe. No, and this, you've got to select the text. Don't know why you would have to do that. Make it black and just make it big. Dauphinoise. I'm pretty sure that's spelled wrong, but if you put it into Google, Google will tell you how to spell it. Dauphinoise potatoes. Potato dauphinoise. It's a French dish. Anyway, I digress. And so if we're going down that whole idea of food and ready meals and doing it for yourself or buying it already in, or a takeaway, or going to a restaurant, what we're going to do in this section is, it's quite detailed. However, what we're doing here is really creating something that can stand us in good stead going forward. So if there's not the ready meal that you're looking for, not quite right, and you think, well, actually, if I spent some time, I could make it myself. That's what we're trying to inspire today. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this animation, and then while we've done that, and this is kind of the main reason why I want to do this, I want to then kind of introduce you into MOGRT, MOGRT, or motion graphics templates. And in this, you can make anything. You can make those things. So go to extensions and Premiere Composer again. These effectively are motion graphics templates. All the typography, it's all motion graphics templates. And when you drag this on, you put it in. And you've got, once it does actually get in and we get to the edit point, there's all these different parameters that we can change within this motion graphics template. So we come into here and we've got the text on here. We can move the position, we can move the scale, we can change the font, not probably to that. And you can change loads of things. Well, what happens if you wanted to change the, there's tracking here, so we can track it out and that kind of thing. But maybe that wasn't in there and you wanted to include it. Or you wanted to include, say it's on 2 lines and you wanted to easily change the space between the two. Well, you can create something that is going to allow you to do that. And that's what we're going to be covering today. It's a whole load. This chapter is going to be absolutely jam-packed with new technique. So if you're not ready for that, I would maybe go and have a coffee, have a lie down, come back. But that's what we're going to be doing here. So first and foremost, we don't have to take our footage into After Effects. We've got to build it in After Effects. But the reason why this works and is so important is that what we're going to be doing is it's a round robin between After Effects and Premiere Composer. And once it's done, you're just, Premiere Composer, Premiere Pro. But once it's done, all you're ever really going to be living in is the Essential Graphics tool, which is generally up here. These are motion graphics templates. I think I've made my point. Anyway, right click and let's replace with After Effects. And I'm just going to call this into the wild. Just so I've got just to call it anything really. Okay, so let's start as we mean to go on. We need to first create some text. And I'm only going to bring in things when you need to know them. I hope that's clear. So if you start to question, don't worry. If you can't see something, don't worry. We will be getting on it. But first and foremost, this footage. I mean, seriously, how beautiful is this footage? I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Just some of the footage that you can get these days with a decent quality drone is just stunning, isn't it? So let's get on with it. And the first thing we need to do is create our text. So right in After Effects, we just come straight up to the type tool, click in here. It will make us a lovely layer across the bottom. And all we say, we just put in our text. We're going to call this Into the Wild. Maybe not world spelled badly, wild. And the thing is with After Effects is it always obeys the last thing you had in. So we've got Nor'Wester, shocker, and we've got this color that we had before. So we're just going to change this. I'm going to change this to white. There we go. We just had to do that simply by having the text selected. I'm going to change this text because for something like this, I think we need Nexa. I love Nexa. Nexa Light is a beautiful, beautiful piece of typeface. I'm also going to force capitals there. Oh, I love that. Love it. I'm just going to size it up. And you'll see I've not done anything. I've not put it in the right place yet. And that's because with text in After Effects, you can change the default, but the default never really kind of sticks for me. And the anchor point is always at the bottom middle, kind of. We could then get that to the center. Don't forget we've got our anchor point mover, and I always have this. This comes as free as the bundle with our boys Animation Composer. Don't forget, link in your course outline. And we can easily center this actually by, you see this anchor point mover, we come here and we can drag it around. If you double click this, it takes it into the center. If I come off here, do you hold control? I think, yeah, you hold down control and double click and it brings it into the middle. However, once you start moving things again, see how the anchor point doesn't move? It's really annoying. So I use my anchor point mover and just boom, done. That goes in the middle. So we're going to center this. Firstly, we're going to center the text. It's already centered. Good. And then in a line, we're just going to center it there and center it there. Boom, done. Sometimes it kind of does take a bit of time to catch up. And I'm happy with that. Am I? Yeah. Okay, maybe size it down just a little bit. And this is where we have the problem, because watch, we're in the center here. If we start to size it down now, the anchor point kind of like stays where it was. It's really annoying, but it's fine. We can just boom and done. And it's important to have it in the center because this is the kind of text that we're going to have in the center. But you will see when we get much further in that we can move that easily. But okay, one step at a time. So whether you realize or not, I absolutely love delving down into the kind of the underbelly that is all this kind of thing. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial because there's loads of little minutiae and intricate things, but I think it's brilliant. I've just changed my mind actually. I'm going to put it into small caps. So all caps does all this. If you don't know this with typography, if you do small caps, wherever you selected a capital, it's a big capital. Whatever is lowercase is kind of small caps. Actually, I don't like that. No, I'm going to go back to all capitals. Good. I'm glad we had that story. So let me just hide this. Just going to hide this for now, just so we can see it. in perfect detail. And what we're going to do is everything that we're doing to this text is in these parameters underneath here. Now, if you think about it, all we've done in the past is maybe P for position, S for scale, T for opacity or transparency. But if you close it up and open it up, we have so many other things. Now, what every single layer has is the transform. So we've got our anchor point, you've got a position, scale, rotation, and opacity. By the way, if you press R on your keyboard, that's rotation. Just to give you all the shortcuts for all of these down here. Is A anchor point? Oh, it is. Never used that before. Just thought I'd check that out. So it's A, P, S, R, and T. Opacity just being awkward. So we're not going to be using our transform. We're going to be using our text. And once we've clicked this down, now you see that we have an option for source text. There's actually a keyframe there. Don't worry, we're not going to be using that today. We have our path options. We also have more options. Do not get worried. I will be stepping through this nice and slowly. So first and foremost, what we're going to do and what we need to do is we want to add on something to this layer. And if you look here with text open, we have this new button and it gives the option to animate, and then there's a play button. What this play button is, although it doesn't look like it, it's actually a drop down menu, or drop up if you're down into the bottom. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a blur. And now, as you can see, we've added an animator and a range selector and a blur. So follow me a little bit blindly here into the wild, as it were. And we've added an animation, which is the blur. We now want to animate the animation, which is the blur. Bear with me. Just do what I'm doing. Click on add now. We've got animate here, which is a kind of hidden drop down. You see up here. What we're going to do is we're going to click on this one and we want to add a property. And that property is opacity. Promise you it will all become clear. So before we go any further, we just need to blur this. So in our blur, we can just maybe type in 50 and press enter. And now we've blurred this out a little bit. And now what we want to do is if we drop down our range selector and drop down advanced, come down here. And what we want to do is we want to play around with the offset. So if we look at this, this is the offset for the range selector. And if you look here, we've got a line here now and a line here now. If we start to drag up this offset, we start to see that we're offsetting the blur. Okay. So that's okay. Don't worry. We're kind of getting there. It's starting the effect now. So I brought this offset up just to kind of show you. Let's just take that back to 0. You can either do that or click in and type 0 or right click and reset. It does exactly the same thing. And if we look down here in our advanced, we need to change a couple of things. Okay, so we need to change the shape to ramp up. Okay, so as you can see, we're starting to add a ramp. We have a number of different kinds of ramps. We've touched on speed ramps in Premiere Pro. And remember, a speed ramp, if I just quickly come up here, and it does look like a speed ramp. If I go show clip frames, time wrapping and speed, and go boom there, and then start to pull that down and then pull that out. Remember, that was a speed ramp. And what this graphic is showing you is we're going from this to this. And the time in which it takes to get from this speed to this speed is this ramp here. So that's the first introduction of a kind of ramp. What we also have is kind of a gradient ramp, which is what this is, which is complete to nothing. That's what we're doing because we're ramping the actual blur. Okay. Now then what we want to do to get the effect that we're looking for is to randomize order. So you see this off, you just click it and it clicks on. And now you're starting to see the start of our kind of randoming of blurring in or de-blurring the effects. Okay. And we're on random seed 0, which is fine for now. There are so many different randoms. Do you understand what I mean? Let me just take that. We've turned on a randomized order. Okay. But a randomized order, if we're going to be able to change it, has to have a set number of values. So we have to have a version of random because to us it's random, but to the actual software, it's not. It says, right, okay, this by this, followed by this, followed by this. Whereas in maybe random seed 1, it's this or that, followed by this, followed by that, followed by them. But do you understand what I mean? So you can actually change the randomizing of it. I know. So we've got that, and we've got it all working there, but nothing is happening. And that's because we've got everything at a state right now. And that state is a random order with a ramp up on a range selector of a blur. Next up, to start this working, is we need to start keyframing the offset. Okay, so right here in the offset of the range selector, I want to keyframe that, and let's set that to -100. So click in, type -100, press enter, and we go completely blurred. Okay, we have our keyframe here. Let's move it along. I think maybe about 2 seconds is good for this kind of animation. And then we set another keyframe. If I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit, just to kind of give us a bit more kind of visual on these two keyframes. This is still only 2 seconds between. And we're going to take this and put it to 100. Boom, done in. Remember, the default was 0. So now if we take this back to the beginning and play it in, we're now randomizing in to those letters. And that's kind of the start of our animation. Looks good, eh? Okay, so now we can go further with this now, because as you can see, even though it's blurred, it's completely visible. And what we need to do is we now need to start to play with the opacity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the opacity down here, right here in the range selector again. I'm going to toggle that on, and then maybe over the first second, I'm going to add another keyframe. Go back to the first keyframe. I'm going to set that to 0. Press enter, and there's absolutely nothing. So now as we play through, okay, maybe it's a little bit fast. Let's take that back, and yeah, maybe what I will do is I'll offset these so we start to kind of fade it in a little bit before we see it. Good. Now the last thing we're going to do for this bit is we're going to select these two, and we're going to press F9. We can right click and select keyframe assistant and easy ease, which as you can see is F9, or you can just literally press F9, and that will give it now some kind of play with that. Looks good, doesn't it? Now the thing is, there's something that we've done that we don't actually need, and that is this keyframing of the opacity. And why is that? Well, because everything is being played about with the range selector and the blur. We don't need to keyframe the opacity. I'll prove it to you. If you see here, it kind of blurs in a little bit while we're kind of, keyframing in the opacity from 0 all the way to 100%. Now, if I take this back to the beginning and get rid of these keyframes so it stays at 0, watch this now. And it actually does a better job. And it's because of the coding within all of this with the range selector and the blur. So don't need to worry about with the opacity. The reason why we brought it in and we added it was so we could set it to 0, because everything else happens above it. So it kind of works in a chain. That looks good, that, doesn't it? I'm actually going to do that over a little bit of a longer time, maybe over, 2 seconds. Yeah. I love it. I love that effect. So this is the basis of what we want. If I just zoom out a little and come back to the beginning, and yeah, it's kind of what we want. Now, what I actually want is I don't want this to be stupid long, 28 seconds long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this down, and we want this to be maybe, if we look at it now and it fades in even, kind of there, and we start fading out about there. So we're talking, 7 seconds and 2 frames. So let's just go to the end, delete that, press O, boom, and now we're 7 seconds. And what we're going to do is we're going to close this up just by doing this right here. And what that does is that changes the work area. Okay, now we could shorten everything by coming up to here, composition settings, and typing in the duration of 0700 and then pressing enter. But this is the easier way. We brought it down exactly where we want it. We just right click here. Oh, so there where I just had the mouse over work area, and you got the side by side. If you right click anywhere here, it doesn't matter where your playhead is, right click and trim comp to work area. Boom, we're now just in the work area. In fact, if you left your mouse, if you left your playhead off the end and then click trim to work area, you'd have lost your playhead. I'm only joking. Idiot. So, okay, we've got this in. Hold that there, and then we're going to start fading it out. And I'm actually going to fade this in just a little bit sooner. Good. Because I like the fade out to be take a little bit longer. And the way in which we're going to fade out is it's the offset that is creating this whole fade in of all the blurs. So we're going to select these two, going to press Control and C, and then right here where our playhead is, if we Control and V, we paste those two again. Now they're going in the wrong order. So all we do is just right click, go to Keyframe Assistant, and we go to Time Reverse Keyframes. So now it's swapped them about. So as you can see, this keyframe is the same as this keyframe, and we go out. Okay. Now let me just get this last keyframe. I'm going to put it right the way to the back. So then we blur in, hold it for a bit, and then we blur out over a different amount of time. Now, if we look, as we said before, think about the randomized order. If we turned off randomized order for a second and we played that through, it would fade in like this and then fade out like that. Okay. However, we don't. Control Z, I want it randomizing in. And the minute that you turn randomize order on, it gives you the random seed. We spoke about this at the beginning, and we're on 0. And 0 means if we scroll this through slowly, we have D appearing, and then T appearing, then the T, and then the N, okay, and then everything else. If we go backwards, as you'll see, we have the last ones to appear or to remain on were the first ones to come on. So we've got the D, the T, and the N. We keep going, yeah. And the easy way what I want for this effect is to have a different order going out. And the easiest way to do this is somewhere between these two keyframes where nothing is happening. We just set the stopwatch for random seed. We then go forward 1 frame. How do we go forward 1 frame on the keyboard? It's not just right on your arrow buttons. It's either page down, if you remember that, well done, or you hold down Control and press left and right. So we've gone 1 frame, as you can see here, and then we're just going to change this to 1. So that's actually keyframing between the seed order in a place where you don't see anything happening. So just to remind ourselves, we have the D and the T and the T and the N coming in first. But because we've changed the seed order, as we go, the last letters are still the D, but the H and the I. And it's a different order going out. Okay? Good. Happy with that. I'm just going to Control S that. Happy? This is pretty much, we're almost out there now. We're done for this building of it. There's just one other thing I want to do, and that is I want to put some movement on this. Now, an easy way to do this would be to come up here, close it all up, and press S on our keyboard for scale. Go right to the beginning, keyframe it, go right to the end, or press O on your keyboard to go to the end. It's another shortcut for you. And go to maybe 110. Hit Enter, go back to the beginning, and we've got this moving over time. And that kind of gives a good effect. However, I'm going to undo and leave the scale at 100. And what we're going to do is we're going to play with the tracking. Remember in here where we had a in Premiere Composer, and it was this, and we played with the tracking. So there's the tracking right here. We're looking at we'll just hide that for now. We played with tracking of here. So it's actually the spacing in between the text, the letters, that's it. But it doesn't affect the size of the letters. That's what we're going to do with here. And the thing is, in this one, let me just undo that, you had to set the tracking, and that's kind of all it was. However, in here, we can set what the tracking does. And the way in which we do this is that we twirl down the text, and on the text layer, remember we added an animation before, we add the blur, we just literally add tracking to our whole composition. And as you can see here, we've got our tracking right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a keyframe of 0, drag it right the way back. And I'm doing it here. Oh, by the way, you can't just keep dragging in After Effects. You've got to place it. You see, if I keep dragging now, it kind of goes off. So just be aware of that. And the reason why I'm doing it here is actually I'm going to bring my mouse here so I can see how much it tracks. And I'm just going to drag out just a little bit. Maybe about, I don't know, maybe 20. That's probably enough for me. And then I'm going to drag that all the way to the end. Again, not going all the way off the screen, just here. And now if we play that back, there's no movement, although at first it looks like it's zooming in, but it's actually not. It's just moving out. Looks good, doesn't it? And just to confirm that, if I go to scale, look, there's absolutely no movement. It stays at 100% all the way through. But because of the de-blur, and I'm looking at the T now, just watch that T, and it looks like it grows a little, but it's not. It's just becoming clearer. And that tracking will then go all the way over the end. Now, let me just get those keyframes up again by U on the keyboard. This is a linear keyframe. We're not easing this because we kind of want this to be constant all the way through. And that right there is your own graphic. And the reason why it's important to do this all on this graphic is because now nothing changes, even if you change the text. If I come into here and double click it, which brings up this, and I go, let's go wild, and click out. If I bring that back to the beginning, again, this is now going to randomize all of those letters exactly how we said before. Just going to Control Z because Into the Wild is better. And now if I just save that, and I'm going to go back to Premiere Pro. And obviously we've shortened down the workspace now. And again, this is again a reason why we duplicated it. And I'm going to turn that back on. And now let's play that. And now we have the text. Brilliant. Now, if you're happy with that and you're done, then you're done. But we're going to go further now, and we're going to give you the ability to make this again and again and again, or use this again and again and again without having to go through all that, because we're now going to create this, or make this, convert it into a motion graphics template.